Welcome back, guys, to the Futbal Biz podcast. As always, I'm Graysen Mortimer. He is Hunter Boyvin, and there isn't too much to talk about today. Not a ton happened over the weekend. There were some big results, of course, but other than that, the Prem, the Bundesliga have both wrapped up. Liga is almost done as well. La Liga's got one game week left, so all the big five leagues almost done yet. Serie A, I believe, is basically done as well. So almost there, and yeah, we'll review some of these matches. And we'll jump right into it, starting with the French league. PSG have finally won the league. I say finally because this team had no excuse not to get 100 points, but that didn't happen. And even though they did win the league, I feel like some PSG fans might feel underwhelmed.
Well, you kind of should when, like you said, a team like that. I know Neymar's been out, but Neymar, Mbappe, Messi, on paper should be the greatest front three ever. But your final game, you actually end in a draw, or the game that would win you the league against Strasbourg, which it feels like they didn't even really try because maybe they didn't need to. But looking at the table now, they're only up by 4 points, so they probably should have been trying a lot harder. But at the end of the day, they won the league, so whatever.
Yeah, I definitely think PSG's at the point where they've made the French league not not stale because there have been other winners recently, even though there shouldn't have been. There's just an aura of if this team doesn't win anything else, if they don't win the Champions League, then their season's kind of a failure. And I feel like PSG fans have a reason to feel that way, but they can't seem to find a coach that works for them. They've had a lot of great coaches in the past. They've had the likes of Ancelotti. They had Pochettino. They've had Thomas Tuchel. I mean, there's been some good coaches there, but Galtier, I don't think he's the answer. I definitely think they need somebody else. We'll see what happens with him at the end of the season. I can't imagine he'll be there next year. My guess would be that they find someone else.
I don't really know many on the market that would be willing to take that job. I mean, Nagelsmann is still out there. He's not affiliated with anyone right now after Chelsea had signed Poch. So that's a possibility. I like him a lot, despite what happened, of course. So I would hope that he doesn't go there, to be honest, because while he'll win the league, sure, um, you're not going to get anything else with that team. It's a team that, for some reason, seems to be okay with just domestic wins.
Yeah, they do, and they shouldn't be. I mean, that team has so much to aspire to, and they just always fall short of expectations. I mean, you've got the best front three in the world. You won't next year. I don't think Messi's
No,
staying,
Neymar's leaving.
and I think Neymar's possibly leaving as well. Mbappe's already said he's going to play there next year, so they'll have at least him. But I think PSG's. I mean, if they keep Ekatike, it's quite possible their front three next year is Mbappe, Ekatike, and somebody like Carlos Soler. Like it's not going to be the same. I'm not knocking Carlos Soler here. He's not a bad player, but he's not Messi. I mean, no one is Messi. It's it's the type of thing where you had your chance this year. I don't think they're going to win the UCL next year. I don't even think they'll be in the conversation. They just don't have the squad depth, in my opinion. So, and the midfield is frankly, I think, weaker than a lot of the other ones out there. Verratti is a superstar. I consider him. I've put him in very high regard, but outside of him, it's not the same as even Barcelona's midfield. I think is better than PSG's.
I think, without bias, Bayern did a good job of exposing that because after Mbappe, like Mbappe was the only threat those two games, and besides him, I mean, you had a really slow defense, um, and a really lackluster midfield, and that got exposed. And of course, in the league, that's not really going to happen, barring a few teams who tend to be up there anyway, Marseille and Lille and whatnot. But they haven't really had the need, I guess, to um, fix that, capitalize upon that. They have the money. So, and if you're going to lose a lot of big name, big money players next season, I would hope for their sake that they learn how to allocate those funds towards something good.
Yeah, I think they have to. I mean, you got to sign a midfielder. I mean, somebody like the likes of even Kivara, I think would be potentially on the market with Spalletti leaving Napoli. So I don't know how that's going to go for them. I think Spalletti was a very good coach. He's on the market now, so maybe he'll go to PSG and uh, and go back to he'll sign Kivara with them. So that could happen. I don't see it happening. I'm kind of just throwing something out there, but I think Spalletti could actually do a job at PSG. I think he'd be one of the better options out there if they did decide to move on from Galtier. Um, just won the league with Napoli, their first league win in over 30 years. And Kivara, I think, would solve a lot of those midfield issues. You could play him in a number 10 with the likes of Verratti and Danilo Pereira behind him. I think that it does improve things a lot. Not perfect. Danilo has switched between CDM and center back, so he's versatile, but I think Kivara would have definitely improved PSG's midfield and then be able to get the ball to the likes of Mbappe.
Think the window opens up in a little bit less than a month. So once that time comes, it's going to be a lot more exciting, and I'm very excited for the window for all teams.
Me too. I'm very, very much looking forward to it. I think a lot of what we're going to cover this summer is going to be
Yeah,
just transfers, and then also trying to get some interviews on here. But um, yeah, that being said, I think we've talked enough about France. I don't really want to delay that. We'll move into our main story here, and that is the Bundesliga. It came down to the last day, and I got to say, Dortmund had no excuses not to beat Mainz at home, and they fall down 2-0 to Mainz in the first half hour. And then they managed to claw it back 2-2 with a late Nicholas Sula goal, but it wasn't enough as Musiala scored in the 89th minute to win Bayern their 11th straight league. And I got to say, if I know you're happy about that, but what I am going to say is this is not a great look for the Bundesliga because one, you've had the same team win 11 years in a row. Two, your top scorer had 16 goals. That's kind of sad when you think about it. Like outside of Lewandowski, I can't think of the last time there was a 25 or 30 goal scorer in the Bundesliga. They haven't really come by, and obviously the Prem hasn't had too many 30 goal scorers, but a lot have hit 25. Harry Kane was second in the Prem this year, and he had 30 on Tottenham. Like it's not a great look. It's not a great look,
if
but
you do think about it, it's not a big difference, but they do play four less games than each of the top five leagues. They only play 34 games, which of course is not a lot, enough to get 10 more goals. Um, but it's considerable. I mean, when it came down to the Golden Boot race 2 or 3 years ago, when Ciro Immobile won it over Louis, he only won by a couple more goals, and he had 4 more games to do it. So it is a considerable but small difference, and it matters at the end. But I understand what you're saying, but I can't totally disagree.
yeah, it just kind of says that there aren't too many elite strikers in the Bundesliga. The top one, I believe, was Füllkrug. I want to say.
It
I
was
believe he was. It was tied at 16, but I believe he was one of the two that was
yeah,
there. Um, and I mean, he's kind of been a journeyman striker his whole career. He hasn't. He kind of was a late bloomer, kind of a Jamie Vardy type of striker. And when that guy's your top scorer, I mean, Vardy's a different case, of course, but when Füllkrug is your top scorer at 16 goals, I mean, no knock against him. That's not a great look for your league. It really isn't. Um, but that being said, I'm not going to distract too much from the fact that Bayern did win and Dortmund choked horribly. If they beat Bochum, that wouldn't have been a problem. But instead, they failed to beat Bochum. They failed to beat Mainz. They dropped both. They didn't even start Jude Bellingham against Mainz. I don't know what Terzic was thinking there, but The best chance
Yeah,
to win Marco Royce something, and they blow it.
let me say that. So apparently there was a minor knee injury for Jude. I don't know how truthful that is, but at the end of the day, you know this is their last game of the season. There's nothing else coming after this. You got to play at least half the game. I don't know how bad it was, but this is the most important game of the club's career in the last 11 years. And I just think that having him as the actual water boy, and it's not even a joke, having him be the water boy that day is not the greatest move I've ever seen. I don't know the severity of the injury, if it's even a thing. Um, Even giving him the benefit of the doubt, I think he should have played at least the last 20 minutes, which is when they really needed him.
Yeah, at least if you're gonna not start him, I mean, it's halftime. You got to put him in at halftime. I mean, he's your best player. He won Bundesliga Player of the Season, which not sure how I feel about that, to be honest. I do think there were others that maybe should have had a chance, but I guess if you don't have a giant goal scorer, then it could really go to anybody. It's the type of thing where it's like he's your best player. I think he Jude Bellingham at 75%, I still think can play a full 90. I mean, he's only 19. He's a phenomenal athlete. And yeah, as you said, it's their most important game in an entire decade. I don't understand, other than the Champions League, maybe against Bayern Munich, which, to be fair, was in 2013. So it has been a decade. It's the type of thing where it's like, why would you not just go all in? I get that he's hurt, and it's a minor injury. If he feels it, then take him off. You know, you have guys, but it's not a great look for Dortmund right now because they're losing Bellingham, most likely. They're guaranteed losing Rafael Guerrero, which he led the Bundesliga in assists this year with 12, I want to say. That's a big loss. I mean, I don't know how you're going to replace him easily. You can't. There's a shortage of elite left backs out there, and Guerrero is frankly one of them. And yeah, this was their chance. This was their chance, and it's times like this when I wish Jurgen Klopp was still at the club because if he was, this league would have been wrapped up in April.
Yeah, because you capitalize on the blunder, the many blunders that Bayern had. A two-manager season is never anything we want to have. Uh, but like much like Chelsea, who completed what, a four-manager season, three-manager season. Obviously, it
For
it didn't work out for them, but completely different league. But at the end of the day, um, it was I was fascinated that it really did come down to the final minute. Like it could not get any more dramatic than that. Watching it live was ridiculous. Checking my phone, switching broadcasts, all that. It was even beyond the win. It was a great experience to be able to just go back and forth. It was really cool. Me and you had discussed this in private. That was my first time live watching something like that where it actually came down to the last minute of games playing at the same time and stuff like that. For anyone, that's just a really cool thing to watch.
yeah, absolutely, and it's sad for everyone that isn't a Bayern fan because I think most people were rooting for Dortmund.
Mm.
I'm sure that you noticed that as well. And yeah, I feel for Marco Royce, though. I mean,
I'm a
even
German,
you have to feel for Marco
honestly,
Royce because the
I'm
guy
a
has
Germany
like,
supporter, and I'm sorry, but he missed out on the 2014 winning World Cup due to injury, and he would have been on that squad without it. And of course, just being on Bayern for over a decade, watching players leave and win
you
titles
mean at Dortmund?
without him, yeah. Um, but yeah, it's been rough for him, and I don't know. I'm sure he'll play another season, but I don't think he'll ever get as close as they did now. When you obviously lost Holland, but you managed to fill the gap there with superstar performances from people who aren't even strikers. And when you're losing also those people, a top assister, one of the best youngsters in the world, probably the best youngster in the world, especially at his age, that's gotta hurt. And Well, obviously, and I liked Terzic. I think he was great. Unfortunately, he did step down as of the final match
Yeah.
day. I think maybe they could have kept him and built upon that, but I mean, he's been there for a couple of years, maybe 3 years. Um, but yeah, it's kind of sad because the whole team will is kind of falling apart now.
Yeah, if Jude leaves, they have to get some quality midfielder in, which I already struggle to think of guys for PSG. So I think that kind of says something. It's Dortmund, though. They will find some youngster. They always do.
Yeah, but they have a lot of money. They'll get money from this transfer, especially if it goes for
Oh,
well.
absolutely. And they have enough guys, I think, to build on. Allaire, I think if he played a full season, I think he would have been the top scorer in the Bundesliga. Obviously, he had to fight back from cancer, so that's something that's a lot bigger than football. But I think give him a full season. I think he'll score 20 goals next season if he stays healthy. I have no doubt in my mind. He's a good enough player. He's an imposing guy, decent finisher of the ball, and he didn't have a bad season once he came back. But that was Allaire after battling cancer. I mean,
Yeah,
he was not 100% probably until close to the end of the season, if that. I mean, he's fought back from so much. I do think that he's got a great shot at becoming top scorer next season, even if Bayern Munich does sign somebody. I mean, to put it into perspective, he played 19 games. He had 9 goals and 3 assists in those 19 games, and that's Allaire not at 100%.
mm,
After battling back from something that uh, no one should have to fight back from. He's 28. He's in his prime. I think he's got a great shot next season. Especially if Dortmund adds a couple of guys. I definitely think Bellingham's getting sold. Um, I would say Madrid is probably the favorite to sign him, as well as Alfonso Davies. Madrid seems to really want him too, and I really hope he goes there. I would be ecstatic if that happened. Watching Canada's boy wonder go to arguably the biggest team in the world, I would be very happy about that. And he'd be Real Madrid starting left back. He'd go from your guy to my guy in multiple teams nationally and at the club level. But yeah, it'll be definitely an interesting window. Dortmund have a lot to do, a lot to think about, a lot of guys to potentially replace. So we'll see what happens in terms of that.
I think it would be the right time if they moved on to capitalize on selling Alfonso because he will probably be at one of his highest prices right now. Um, he's won everything there is to win club level at Bayern. He's won the sextuple that couple years ago. Obviously, he's won the league every time. Uh, I think with Madrid, he'll do close to the same because even though I like Camavinga at left back, he doesn't like it. Even though he's been really good there, they do need a proper left back, left wing back, and I don't know what happened to Ferland Mendy. I don't watch that intently to
He
his
just kind
game,
of fell off a cliff. He
um,
hasn't been that good.
but they would totally benefit from a player like Alfonso.
Oh, absolutely. Left back is the one place where Madrid are. There isn't really much depth there because outside of Camavinga playing it and then Mendy, the next guy they've used at left back was Nacho Fernandez, who has been a very good, serviceable player for Madrid, but he's not. He can't be your long term answer. He's a depth piece, and I think he knows he is. But he's happy to stay there because he loves Madrid and it's his club. Um, but yeah, Alfonso would be a huge player for Real, and I hope he goes there. I really do. Um, but yeah, left back's the one place where they need somebody, and yeah, Camavinga has done a job there, but he also did get exposed horribly against Bernardo Silva and Man City. I mean, Bernardo Silva was torturing the guy the whole game. I mean, scored twice in the home match, so yeah, it's not great, but yeah, Kamavinga, I definitely think once Kroos and Modric are aged out, I mean, he's the midfield he is.
Yeah.
Um, the passing is still there. That's his thing.
All right. I think we can talk about this
The
lovely
Prem.
team that we love so much.
Yeah.
Tottenham. Tottenham. Oh my God. We love Tottenham. Um, feel so bad for Harry Kane. He truly is a once in a generation striker because to score 30 goals
In a
on
team that finished eighth.
eighth place team, it's insane. And in so many seasons, you would have been the top goal scorer with 30. Um, that's just, I think he probably had beaten his tally last season. I don't remember what it was,
He did.
but he beat out his tally last season on a season that they made top four, and they've got nothing to show for it except maybe he'll get a transfer.
I mean, I ranted about it last week. He needs to leave. He really does. And I feel for him and Tottenham because again, I don't know how you score that many goals and don't win anything. I mean, it's like if Alan Shearer never won anything. Thankfully, he did. He won the title at Blackburn, but after he went to Newcastle, I mean, the trophies dried up.
Yeah,
Kane is kind of, in a way, a modern Shearer in terms of ability because he's an out and out goal scorer. But he's able to assist as well, and he's an English talent. He needs to leave. He really does. If he doesn't leave, I don't think he'll ever win anything. I really don't. Tottenham are a mess. They spent way too much money. We'll do a segment probably next week on uh, transfer sagas, best transfers, worst transfers. We'll do some of that. But one of the transfers that I've already thought about for worst one is Richarlison. I've already mentioned it. I think he sucks in club football. He hasn't been good, but Kane just needs to leave. They haven't been able to establish a strong enough team around him to win anything, which they should have, but they haven't. And not a great look if you're Tottenham. And they did win 4-1 over the weekend, but wasn't enough. And eighth place it is. No Europe next season.
yeah. But someone who did make Europe, or a few teams that made Europe that probably did not think. Liverpool, Aston Villa, and Brighton, all two teams that are never typically in the conversation, plus a team that was written off early off in the season due to really poor performances, um, all of which had a worse start than Tottenham, who I think actually started fairly strong
They did.
for their standards. Um, all three of them make it over. Um, Liverpool should be up there. That they're just too good of a team, uh, at least on paper, to not do that. They struggled a little too much for my liking, but they made it. That's what matters. But and like you said, in great fashion on the last match day, 4-4 draw, which was a crazy back and forth game.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that from Liverpool and Liverpool's feeder club. I really did think that I really did think that that game would be an easy win for Liverpool, especially since Southampton had absolutely nothing to play for, since they had already gotten relegated. But uh, I mean, that's one of the games of the season, to be honest. I mean, how often do you see a 4-4 draw? I can't think of the last time I saw one. I watched a 3-3 over the weekend when I went to the Revolution game, but I mean, 4-4 is something else. I mean, Diogo Jota had two. Suleimana, who frankly I haven't really heard of that much, scored twice for Southampton. JWP got a goal, who I frankly think is probably going to leave Southampton. James Ward-Prowse absolutely deserves a move. He's a quality player, just in a bad team. And Bobby Firmino and Gakpo both got one. Firmino in his final game for Liverpool. So I honestly think Liverpool could have done more to keep him, but he's looking for a new challenge. And there's a lot of teams I think could honestly have used Firmino. And I've heard Real Madrid come up as well. So we'll see where Firmino ends up. I hope he goes to a team where he'll be a guaranteed starter because he's still class.
Yeah, no, honestly, I didn't even hear about that until the second to last game when he was like scoring his last goal at Anfield, and it's definitely been shocking. But he has been there for a long time. I think with the players that they've signed, uh, Darwin and Gakpo, even though they've been late bloomers, I think it's clear where their mind's at as far as what they want up front, what they want just in the attacking general area. Um, he's not what's going to fit their new style of play in the coming future. And I think you probably saw that. Plus, he had also won most, if not everything, at club level for them as well. League, Champions League. There's had been some of the domestic trophies.
FA Cup and League Cup are both in there
Yeah.
too.
So I'm sure he's completed his challenge there. So wherever he goes, it might be maybe a Spanish team. I feel like that's a place where players of his caliber and his style tend to go. Atletico seems to be a team that accepts players like that. Um, but we'll see. We have a month before we see anything final.
Yeah, I mean, or it's possible if Osimhen leaves, he could go to Napoli to replace him, or maybe he'll be Bayern's striker. I actually think he could be good at Bayern. I do. He's got the link up play. He's a decent finisher, and he's already played in the Bundesliga. A lot of people forget that he did play in the Bundesliga before going to Liverpool with, I believe, Hoffenheim. He was good there. So I'm not going to count it out. I don't
Yeah,
see it happening because I think they'll want someone younger, but I'm not going to count it out.
I think it's just because they had kind of dictated already the amount that they are willing to and want to spend. It seems well out of his range at his age and skill. Not to say that they have to spend that much. Obviously, they would like to spend less if they could. I think that's the case with anyone, but it seems like they want their next Louis, whether it's someone who's already a little bit under that age or if they want to build someone, um, which is not really their style for strikers because, of course, the last ones that they've had have all been fairly
Ready made.
established. Um, but yeah, I don't think it'll be him. I don't think I will complain, but I think with the price tag they've dictated, I'm expecting something a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it'll be Kane or Osimhen, one of the two. I don't see it being anyone else really. And an outside chance if Darwin Nunez is disgruntled at all, maybe him, but I don't see that happening at all. Um, there's going to be there's going to be a big name going there, I think. But as for Bayern, I mean, yeah, they usually sign big strikers. I mean, Lewandowski obviously was there forever, and then before him was Mario Gomez, and then Mandzukic. So
Yeah,
all three of those guys were, I mean, very much established. Um, and I mean, Gomez was one of the most underrated strikers out there. I mean, no one ever talked about him. But yeah, as for that game, the Liverpool Southampton, that was insane. But yeah, the Prem season's over. Very good seasons for some teams. You mentioned Aston Villa, Brighton. Both of those teams, I definitely think, were about where they should have ended up, but um, definitely achieved big. Brighton obviously are already probably losing their two big star players, so we'll see how they do next year with the loss of those guys. I think they'll keep Matoma, which definitely
yeah.
is a good one to keep because he's a stud. And Ciso looks really good. Scored an absolute worldie against Man City. I watched that goal. Was watching that game, and I was taken back by that because that goal was incredible. No chance for Ortega, but there's still a lot of quality in that team. Evan Ferguson's still there, of course. But yeah, well, I hope Brighton does well in the Europa League, and then Villa. I'm already putting Villa as one of my favorites for the Conference League. One because I mean, the English team should usually do well. West Ham of all teams made the final. They finished 15th this year, so I think Villa. I think that bodes really well for them. Plus, they have the anything with Europa league winner in their team in the dugout, Mr. Unai Emery. So I honestly think if I was doing a way too early predictions right now, I would predict Aston Villa to win the Europa Conference League. I don't really see any reason why they can't, especially if West Ham wins it. I mean, that kind of says something. If a team in 15th can win that competition, so could a team with Unai Emery at the helm. Um, but yeah, you're muted.
Be a little unfair to have honestly any Prem team in there. Eighth place is way too, or sorry, seventh is way too high of a place in the Premier League to put in uh, a league like the Europa League. sorry, the Conference League. Like those teams, some of those, I've never heard of some of these teams, and I'm sure that's the case with many people who even hardcore watchers. Some of these teams are just picking names out of a hat. But I think, like you said, if they keep Unai Emery, which I'm sure they will, but this is one of your best managers in a while, then they'll go very, very far. They can probably book their tickets to wherever the final is now. Um, I don't see unless they have, God forbid, all 11 starters are injured. That's the only way I can see this not going on.
Yeah, I don't see why they don't win it. I really don't, especially with Emery. I just if Emery was to leave for some reason, then I would decrease their chances. I just think he's a good enough coach. I mean, he won the Europa League with Villarreal, which only got promoted to La Liga, I want to say about 8 or 9 years before that. So fast growing club, of course. They've been relevant for a bit, but still, he won the Europa League with them. He won it with Sevilla 3 times. I mean, the only Europa League he lost was to Chelsea at Arsenal. So there's no real shame in that. That's when Chelsea actually were good and not finishing 12th. But yeah, I think we can move on to our. Oh wait, one thing we forgot to talk about the promotions. Luton Town will be in the Premier League next season, pending they fix up their stadium and add a few seats. Which, if anyone's seen the videos, seen where their stadium is, this is a stadium literally in a neighborhood in someone's basically backyard. Like imagine, I mean, the people saying like, "Oh yeah, imagine just walking out of your house and seeing Kevin De Bruyne walk into a stadium." Like that is a reality for this team. I'm hoping that they get those upgrades in place because this will be easily the smallest team that has ever played in the Prem. They'll get a bunch of money from being promoted. It's one of the wealthiest games in the world, if not the wealthiest game. The championship playoff promotion. I mean, this is something. This is unlike anything we've really ever seen, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, so I think it's about 200 million pounds is what it roughly is for winning that. Um, I've seen the memes, and at first I thought it was kind of an exaggeration. But then I actually started looking into it, doing a little bit more research, and it's actually it's the furthest thing from an exaggeration. You might actually have halftime team talks in someone's living room. That's how ridiculous this is. But with 200 million, I think that they'll be able to allocate those funds in a way that is satisfactory to whatever the rules are. It'll definitely take time, and if not, then hopefully someone lends them a stadium, because they'll just be interesting to watch anyway. It's small teams like this, and we put in the notes. This is an inspiration to teams like Wrexham, who have big dreams and eyes on them to eventually make it to the big leagues one day. Um, I don't know how they'll fare, but it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, I don't have the highest expectations for Luton. Um, I think they'll be very lucky to stay up next year, and that's no knock against them. The fact that they've made it to the Premier League is extremely impressive. It really is. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just there's some decent players in there. Um, guys that definitely are have been around a while. Um, and there was one player on Luton that has been with them since they were in non-league football, and I'm having trouble thinking of his name. It'll hopefully come back to me. But they've had one guy that's come up, basically like what Andy King did when he was in Leicester. He came up all the way, from the lower leagues to the Premier League. Um, and it's a guy that really, I believe it's Pelly Rudock is his name. And he's had 360 appearances for this team. He's 29. He's been there since 2014, and he's been there the whole time. Like, and he's improved dramatically. I mean, he's been good since he's been there. He's been a consistent guy. Every league didn't really matter. Pelly Rudock was in that team, and it's guys like him that are an inspiration. And I really do hope that Luton does not get relegated next year. I would love them to stay up. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't see it. But Bournemouth stayed up the first season they were promoted, and they were arguably before Luton one of the smaller teams to come up. So it is possible. Yeah, you're muted again.
I got that. Not much more to add about that. Just excited because it's going to be more interesting to watch the stadium itself. I feel like teams like that always have such a crazy atmosphere. When it's fans that grew up right there, they grew up on the team, um, and that's the only team that they really can support. I think teams like that always have the best atmosphere. Um, but yes, that'll probably be the best part to watch because cannot say I'm hopeful for their performances against top six teams, not even really top 10. I'm sure they'll
There's going to be
somehow,
one. I'm going to
yeah,
call it now. There will be one upset next year, probably at home. I don't know who it'll be. I mean,
Chelsea.
they'll probably beat Chelsea at this point, but I don't know who it'll be. But I feel like somebody like Man City, Man U, Arsenal, Newcastle, one of those bigger teams is going to go to this stadium and lose. I'm going to call that right now. I do think that that's going to happen. Um, Again, and I do think they're going to get relegated. Don't get me wrong, but it'll remind me of what Norwich did to Man City back a couple of years ago when they beat Man City. So there's going to be one team. There's going to be one team that they beat, one of the bigger teams. I don't think they're going to get swept away by each one. I'm going to say that now.
But also shout out to Brentford for being the only team to beat City twice this year. So
Yeah.
shit for them.
I'm not gonna like. Obviously, yeah, they did the double over Man City.
It
The
doesn't
one
mean
at the one this past weekend, City didn't use a lot of their guys, so I'll take it with a grain of salt. But they did, to be fair, beat Chelsea with that team. And I mean, Chelsea are much worse than than Brentford are, but Brentford did do the double over City. They're the only team that did, and yeah, a little disappointed in that, but that is what it is. I'm not really that upset. I'll be more mad if they lose one of the next two games they have. So their season's not done yet. Most of the Prem is, but Man City, West Ham are still playing for something, and Man U as well. Still playing for a bigger place. Um, but yeah, there is one game, two games I do want to talk about. I do want to talk about Sheffield Wednesday for a minute. Sheffield Wednesday was promoted from League One to the Championship this past weekend as well, and they also did beat Newcastle in the FA Cup, so a bit of an upset there. But I want to say about this team, we didn't talk about their semifinal performances whatsoever against Peterborough. So what happened was Peterborough won the first leg 4-0. So basically, Sheffield Wednesday must have been like, oh, the fans were probably like, damn, we're done. We're going to spend another year in this league, in League One. This sucks. Then they won the reverse leg 5-1 and made Wembley. They won on penalties, but they tied it up on aggregate and went to penalties, which they won. And once again, they went to Wembley and they win. They beat Barnsley. So in miraculous fashion, this team has gone from being 4-0 down on aggregate to making the championship. One of the bigger stories that I've seen recently. So I'm going to give a shout out to Sheffield Wednesday.
yeah. I did not pay much attention to that, unfortunately. I must admit, but good for any team that can stand up to the big teams like that, and even if they lose, just put in a solid performance, a passionate performance.
I must say, yeah, exactly. I must say, though, I feel for Peterborough fans. I went to a game last year against Fulham. Fulham was at home, and the Peterborough fans were just happy to score a goal. So I do feel for their fans. They probably were looking forward to going back to the championship, but it didn't happen. Um, yeah, I mean, they were playing Fulham last year. Fulham was at that point one of the most dominant championship teams you've ever seen. Yeah, they looked amazing under Marco Silva. Mitrovic scored twice in that game. But yeah, Peterborough, they scored like late, and their fans, as leaving the stadium, they didn't even care that they lost. They were just like, "We scored a goal, we scored a goal," that sort of chant. So yeah, I do feel for them a bit, but um, yeah. As for the last thing I want to talk about before we get into our usual segment, the New England Revolution did tie 3-3 this weekend against Chicago. I was at the game. They were down 2-0 early. Sheridan Shaqiri was putting on an absolute performance. It's a name you probably haven't heard in a while. He put on a performance in the first half, had a worldy of a pass to a different player. I believe his name was Koutsias. Scored an early goal. Then an unknown goal happened, and then the Revs did fight their way back, tied it 2-2 at the half, and then uh, the game did end 3-3. Josie Altidore, of all people, scored the equalizer. He's been not great this year. I've defended him as much as I possibly can. But yeah, one guy that I'm hoping to get on the show soon did play in that game. So stay tuned for that if you want to hear more. I'm not going to say who it is yet because that would ruin the surprise. But that will move us into our usual segment of goal, idiot, and hero of the week. We'll start with you. We'll start with the goal.
All right, of course, it has to be Jamal Musiala. Just both the way it was scored, the play leading up to it, and of course, the implications of it. Bayern's tied 1-1, and it's the 89th minute, and without a goal, all the hype in the other game would be for nothing, and it would all be for nothing. Jamal Musiala actually came on in the 85th minute. He gets a nice basic pass from Gnabry, but the control he had to just turn around with it, one touch, and then smack it, nice little curve around the defenders. It was so beautiful, but so simple. And of course, like I said, the implications, it would have eventually led them the next few minutes to win the league again. And a player of his age, I think he's also just about 19. That's going to be good to boost the rest of his career, and I'm excited to see where he goes.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm gonna go with Revolution homegrown player Noel Buck. Obviously, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Enciso. He scored a worldy of a goal last week against Man City. But I'm gonna give it to my hometown boy Noel Buck because I saw this goal live. He's about 25 yards out. Takes the ball. He has a lot of open space. Takes it left and then curls it right around the goalkeeper, like from 25 yards out. Hits it, curls it around the goalkeeper. No one's stopping that. Got us back 2-1 in that game. We were down 2-1 at the time. And it was a fantastic goal, especially from a kid that's 18 in MLS already starting. This kid's definitely going to go to Europe at some point. He's absolutely phenomenal. I love watching him play. He's been arguably the Revolution's best midfielder this year, and he's 18. So both of us chose youngsters for this one. As for our hero of the week, I'll let you go first on this one.
Just a duo, of course, I would have to give it one of them two minds who played their hearts out for absolutely no reason at all. They were sitting in a mid-table position that with a loss or a win would mean nothing to them. And for some reason, they decided to have probably one of their best games of the season, which, of course, would lead to the downfall in such quick succession. Dortmund. But the other one, a little bit more on the bright side, would be Unai Emery, who took a shite Aston Villa team who was bottom half table, I think 14th maybe it was where he picked them up at, and brought them to a 7th place finish for the Conference League over a top 6 team in Tottenham. And that's just something that you don't do unless you're pretty special of a manager.
Yeah, I don't hate either of the shouts. I mean, I'm not happy about Mainz, but I see why you picked them. My pick, I just talked about them. I'm going to go with Sheffield Wednesday. It's a phenomenal story. I gotta give it a shout. It's really something that I don't think a lot of people would have seen coming. The fact that they came from 4-0 down on Niagara to win 5-1. It reminds me of when Barcelona did that against PSG in the Champions League. I mean, that was lunacy. And this is kind of a similar thing. So I gotta say Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, they just kind of surprised me, and I'm always good for a surprise like that. So Sheffield Wednesday is my pick.
All a good story. But now, yeah, loser. I'll finish that one off. I'm actually gonna do two. One, pretty obvious, Spurs. They suck, unfortunately for Harry Kane. A team of that caliber missing out on Europe completely. It's kind of unforgivable. Um, but I also want to give a shout out to the UEFA Champions League drawing rules because now, unfortunately, that Bayern won the league, they cannot draw Barcelona in the group stage, and that's very sad. So
That's okay. You'll knock them out in the knockout stages.
probably, but no, that's going to be the two losers for me on that one.
Yeah, I've got two for this as well. I'm going to give a shout out to my idiot of the week last week, which was Marcos Acuna. So after getting sent off in the Champions League for time wasting, what does he do? He gets sent off again. 2 weeks running, he gets sent off. I didn't see the challenge specifically. I just saw that he got red carded. And I got to say, but like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't get sent off twice in a month. Like, what?
Really doesn't want to play, I guess.
No, he doesn't. Clearly, he was like, "Oh, I won the World Cup. Now I just want to make some money and retire." Like, what, what are you doing, Marcos? But yeah, I got to give him a shout. But in the end of the day, I mean, there's only one person, there's only one team I can give it to, and it's Dortmund. I mean, you had everything lined up perfectly. You had a team that wasn't in good form. You're at home. You're in front of the yellow wall, and you can't win. Got to give it to Dortmund, unfortunately, and I, I really am not happy about that. But that's football for you, and big,
Breaks your
tough,
heart. Yeah,
big tough moment
sure.
there. So yeah, got to give it to Dortmund. Yeah,
It's a good way to wrap it up then.
yeah. Well, that will do it for us this week. We talked about a lot of leagues closing up and results that have been wrapped up. PSG have won the French league. Bayern Munich have won the Bundesliga after a dramatic final day push from them with Musiala scoring the winner. We then went into the Premier League a little bit, talked about Tottenham finishing eighth, the fact that Villa and Brighton have overachieved and done well. I called that Villa would win the UEFA Conference League next season. I just don't see why they don't. I mean, unless they get upset, which anything's possible. But we then went into the fact that Luton Town did get promoted, and the fact that this is easily the smallest team that'll ever play in the Premier League potentially. Uh, the fact that they're in a backyard stadium. I then went into Sheffield Wednesday's fortunes a little bit because it was just too good of a story not to talk about. The fact that they came back from 4-0 down in aggregate to win their game. And then, as always, we wrapped it up with our usual goal, hero, and idiot of the week. And as always, I'm Grayson Mortimer.
Hunter Boyvan.
Please subscribe if you haven't already. We would love to keep hearing from you. Get some good content out for you. Our Instagram is open. Please give it a follow. And as always, we do hopefully have some good interviews coming up. There's a couple in the works right now, including a player from the New England Revolution who I'm really hoping to bring onto the show. He told me personally that he would, so I just got to work out the details with him on that one. But stay tuned for more. We will see you next time.